afternoon, everyone. Great to see you on FOA Live today. I'm Jennifer Katrulya, co-president of FOA, joined, of course, by Rush Olney. Rush, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Jennifer, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everybody who's taken the time to tune in to FOA Live today. We appreciate you.
We're glad to be here with you, and we have a great show for today. Very excited to welcome, after we do our housekeeping as we do every week, to welcome Jay Rogers. Jay is, first of all, just a privilege to have Jay on today, and I want to say thank you. Jay is one of the first individuals we met when Rush and I became part of Family Office Association, and he is a member of the board of advisors for FOA, but he's a seasoned investment professional. He's got an extensive background across some of the most prestigious financial service companies. And he also, a number of years ago, 2009, became the co-founder of Alpha Strategies, and has really leaned in on working with family offices on crafting their alternative investment strategy, addressing the unique demands and compliance and discussions around family office structure. So Jay is sought after by families across the country. We were just talking actually a little bit before we aired about how he is asked to be just about everywhere for conversations and really looked to for sound advice as high net worth families evaluate their unique needs. And so we'll be welcoming Jay to the show in a few minutes. I do want to start with some housekeeping that Rush and I will kick around a little bit. First, we are going to re-air. So for those of you who may have missed it in the course of the eclipse last week, the really great show we did with Michael Zhu and with Jason Ho. And it was a privilege to have them on, and super excited again to reshare that broadcast for those of you who may have missed it. The timing of this show happened to be right around eclipse time. So I know there were a few people a little bit distracted, but again, we know hundreds of you have watched since it actually aired. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll bring it back again as a broadcast for everyone. So thanks for tuning into that. As far as current FOA events, I am excited to be on Wednesday of this week, kicking off to head from the Northeast to Kansas City to link up with Rush in person, as well as a number of our other members who are local to Kansas City, but also flying in from Florida, New York, Texas, California. So, it's really special to see how members from everywhere, a couple of the families who are coming are flying back from out of the country, and the amount of value that our members in the community place just on spending that time together. So if you are making the trip, thank you. If you are in Kansas City welcoming the guests and taking the time to attend, we will be having a steering committee to talk about and plan for the October Fall Summit. And then we'll also be enjoying a special dinner together and some hangout time. So really looking forward to that evening. I will share that for the October Summit, many of you may have seen, we've started to announce the first of the speakers. We do have Consuelo Vanderbilt. We have Greg Merrill, who many of you have already met or seen on some of our webcasts, Global Head of Digital Innovation from Nike. Chris Long has graciously agreed to be our opening keynote speaker, and actually want to thank Jay for the introduction to Chris and his group. Lindsay Reynolds, who I know will be our speaker at our dinner this week. So a lot of really cool things happening. Check the FOA page for the list of speakers, more to come. But that's something that's actively in progress. And then as we come out of that event, we'll be having a VIP event in early May in Miami, and lots more to list. So things continue to evolve for FOA. The other thing I do want to announce, this will be just a brief mention of it, and then we'll be sharing a lot more, is our new FOA Innovator Series. And that Innovator Series, we've been getting just so much excitement and so much demand from family offices who are involved in various forms of innovation, whether it's healthcare or climate control and climate change, or now certainly Rush helps to lead up our, whether it's blockchain conversations and our crypto crew. So we have a lot of that, and of course real estate, tech, and other things that are really taking hold of the community and making great world changes. So Rush, we know we'll be looking to you for that. But that innovation community will include the opportunity for family offices to nominate companies that are doing cool things, and others to apply to be part of these events. And what will happen is throughout the year, we will have a panel of individuals who will give feedback about the presentations and about the companies we see. And then some of those companies will be invited to participate in our regional showcases, which will be different cities around the country. And then we will be having an annual award ceremony. So, and the first award ceremony will be as part of our October Fall Summit. So we're thrilled about that. I do also want to call out a quick congratulations to Sean Springs. So if you don't follow Sean, former NFL professional, he now is on to some incredible innovation, and he has some exciting announcements. So I'm going to tease with that. And if you don't follow Sean, please go ahead and keep an eye on him, because he's got some great stuff he'll be sharing over the course of the next few days. I was allowed to give that little bit of a sneak peek and tip off, but you'll have to follow him for the news. So with that, Rush, anything you want to add? I know that you've got actually some cool things going on. Nice weather, at least there in Kansas City, so I'm excited to get out there. But if you'd like, I know we're going to welcome Jay in and learn a little bit about him and any other updates.
Excited to have Jay on, and really appreciate him taking the time. Excited to have everybody coming to me versus going to the coast. So it'll be nice to have a really good couple of days with all the people we typically see, and it sounds like some new ones from FOA, and then the innovation group, the communities, which we have several of, but a lot of them are really taking shape, and people are throwing their hat in the ring to come in and be an advisor, be a part of the committees for those. So very excited about that. EB5 being one, the innovation group being another. And as we spin these up, I think it'll be really good for the community as a whole.
Great. Well, thanks, Rush, very much. And with that, Sander, if you don't mind, we will bring in Jay and get to know him a little bit today.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. And as Rush always reminds me, good morning, afternoon, and evening. We're fortunate enough to have people jumping in from all over, actually now the world, which is great. And for those of you who are used to listening to us live and spending time with us, well, thank you very much. We did spend some time. We have a little bit of an issue today, it seems, with some connection speed. So you'll see Jay off to the bottom left, likely on your screen. He is here with us. You'll be able to chat with him, send in your comments, questions, let us know if you're on, and we will chat with you. But we wanted to make sure you could get a good view of Jay, and so we've got the picture up here as well. If you do have comments or questions as he is talking, please feel free to send them in, and we'll watch for those. Anything you want to have answered outside of the public chat, please DM me or Rush, and we'll follow up and make sure those questions get to Jay. We'll also make sure his profile is linked again through the chat, so you can follow up with him as well. But Jay, thank you again for being on. Really appreciate it. I as I shared in the opening, it's been a privilege for me, and I think I can speak for Rush to get to know you. And you are always on the move. So maybe you can share with everybody a little bit about you and kind of what you've been up to.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer and Rush. For those that don't know me, my name is Rogers. I started my career back in the early 90s with some of the, as Jennifer mentioned, some of the big major Wall Street firms, private client and or investment banking. And kind of the evolution of that was back in 2001 when one of my former clients sold a company and asked me to come in-house and do some interesting stuff with them. So that really started my kind of direct family office career. And since that time, I've worked with 5 different families directly either as a founder and help set up the family office, and or somebody that came in at a high level to help expand that family office or focus more on the investment side for them. Outside of that, I have run a hedge fund before. I ran a private equity fund of funds, helped establish one of the first private credit platforms for another group that was doing some things. So I've got sort of a diverse background when it comes to alternatives, including a lot of real estate development and real estate stuff that we've done over the years. So I've kind of unique perspective when it comes to what the right things to do are to set up a family office. And that's kind of what we chose as a topic today is, factors to consider when setting up a family office, because, we see the news all the time and there's more and more millionaires and billionaires being printed on a regular basis. And as people look to exit companies and that sort of thing, a family office is a viable option for people at a certain, price point, so to speak. And I think that there's a lot of misnomers, and the marketing around family offices has blurred the lines quite a bit. So I like to be very, very upfront and say that until you have probably about $100 million, it probably does not make sense to set up a family office. There's enough multifamily offices or MFOs out there that are great at working at that level. But and I think some of the recent events that we've seen in kind of the headlines and politics and that sort of thing, I think there's more and more desire for wealthy people to, what I say, disappear and get out of the spotlight and make your business be very, very private. Because with social media nowadays and cyberbullying and the woke culture that we see, there's generally nothing good can come of having your business out there in the public. And so really part of setting up a family office is, formalizing a structure to make your family wealth into a business that's protected, but also get it out of the public domain. So if we were looking at, when you first set up a family office, it really comes to the best time to do it is before you have an exit. As you probably heard from your estate planning attorney, whatever else, there's a number of things you can do that will save you a lot of money in taxes and other things if you can get to it before your exit. Unfortunately, some people have missed that window and they're post-exit, and there's still some things we can do. But I would say really getting to understand your options and setting up the infrastructure or the foundation of that family office is one of the single most important things you can do, because that will help dictate the terms on which you do business over the future. And unfortunately, I was in New York last week at a trial in the Southern District of New York, and I had to get on the stand and testify. And at the end of the day, the structure I had set up for this family helped protect them and me and everybody else in this trial, because we did things the right way up front, and it saves a lot of problems on the back end. So I think, like I said, going back to the beginning of what you want to do to set up a family office, it really comes down to the founder, the person who made that money. And a lot of times their thoughts and insights and their view of the world is shaped upon what industry that they're in, but also their background and other things. So it's really important to have an open discussion with the founder as to what kind of legacy they want to leave over time, because that's the beauty of a family office, is you will instill that family with the morals and values that you grew up with that you want to replicate over time for future generations. And so
Jay,
yes.
So have you been seeing families do that? Because it actually came up on a conversation I was having earlier today with someone navigating the process of setting up a family office, or whether they were going to set one up. And, the comment came down to, well, because I've accumulated the money to do so, warrants, and to your point about privacy, et cetera, it was someone considering the structure of a family office, but also reluctance to incur the, some of the overhead that sometimes that toss up between what do I bring in house, what can I outsource, what makes things have the upsides of a legacy structure of a family office, but leveraging some of the benefits and options available to them now.
Yeah, and the beauty is right now at this point in 2024, there's a lot of outsourced options that are actually really good. But there's a few key structures that are very, very imperative to be internal. I call it, in my terms, it's the key three. And that is your chief investment officer to oversee your investments, your chief financial officer that oversees the finances of everything going on, and your general counsel or chief legal officer, however you want to term it, because we use a lot of outside attorneys just because we have to, because for every asset class you're in, there's a different specialist or a different firm that specializes in different things that you're doing. But a GC in-house really helps protect everything from basic NDAs that you're doing on a daily basis to documenting all of your employees and getting them under NDAs, so that way when they're terminated, they can't go out and try to sell your story to the tabloids or something else. So, and then the way I use a sports analogy, but generally speaking, like with GCs I've worked with in the past, they're in charge of keeping track of all the outside attorneys and making sure that the billable hours that we're getting billed are very accurate. So he audits that stuff before we pay. But also I like to say that, internally our GC will run the ball to the 1 yard line before we hand it off to the outside counsel to take that transaction across the finish line, because then we get all the protections and the benefit of the big law firm, but we don't have to pay the $1,000 an hour for all the prep work and everything else up until then. And so historically, a GC in-house pays for itself multiple times over any given year. And so it's just a more efficient way of doing it. Now, when you mentioned outsourcing things, generally IT is something that we outsource most generally. In general, I like to use kind of a lean startup methodology to setting up the family office. We don't know, we'll have a lot of extra people there. We'll have the key personnel and we'll kind of grow into them as the AUM dictates. But IT, security, property management, those are all things that generally speaking we outsource. And then even from an accounting standpoint, we'll have our CFO internally overseeing the accounts payable, accounts receivable kind of strategy, bring them in on structuring some of the deals for tax reasons. But then we'll generally use an outsource CPA firm to do our tax return in more formal accounting. But they generally like dealing this structure too, because we do all the grunt work and they get to deliver the real results on their end. So they, work with them every year to file the tax returns and do all the K1s and partnerships and everything else, but they don't have to worry about all the bill pay day to day, month to month, that sort of thing. So like I said, the key three is really the key to running the family office, and you may have a couple other people as well. But it really goes back to like I said, the person setting up the family office. A lot of times they come from industry and they will have an infrastructure in place from the company that they sold that they may continue on as a chairman emeritus or something. They may have an office there still. They may have a secretary that they work with still. Depends on how engaged they are with the rest of their lives. And so sometimes you can embed a family office inside of a corporate structure that already exists, and that will save a lot of time and money. Other times we can even do more of a virtual family office where people are in remote locations, but each has their own specialty. And you get together maybe at least once a month as a group all together to go over deals and deal flow and other things that are happening on an ongoing basis. But it's just really about maintaining communication among everybody internally is one of the key factors to keep in mind there.
So Jay, I'm going to kick it over to Rush in a second, but I want to ask, circling back to something you were sharing a few minutes ago, as far as tech. We see a lot of families really talk about privacy and about keeping protected, and yet when you explore cybersecurity and other technology protections, which obviously are wide reaching. Rush and I were talking about on a recent show, that families somehow, when they think about their own protection, they can be somewhat lax when it comes to, actually making the investment in the right level of protection until or unless they hear about something that's happened with someone they know, where suddenly the entire, directory of names has been pulled, until it starts to also have a reputational impact. How do you work with families to right size their infrastructure and help give, the right advice with regard to what feels like sometimes overwhelming or unnecessary when you're just used to having a Gmail maybe or something else, but the additional requirements to really protect a family?
Yeah, I mean, there's cost-effective ways of doing that. The beauty of technology is that, every few months it advances, and it's kind of Moore's law. Speed doubles and price halves. So as technology comes, more and more solutions out there, the more competitive they are, the more features they have, but also the price continues to go down over time. And so, again, I would look to, there's several groups that I work with in the past, and offline I can talk to anybody about that, but there's some groups that are really good, kind of outsource IT, that will come and give an evaluation of what you have now and where you should be, and give you kind of a Chinese menu of options to cover those different things. But I think essentially a private server is a given. Having a VPN set up for everybody, especially on their cell phones and other things, to make sure that that's where you're probably most vulnerable from an IT standpoint when you're traveling with either laptops or cell phones, because those are easier to capture versus kind of a home network or a inside of an office is a little bit easier to protect. And then it's just a matter of compliance, because obviously you have family members with kids and grandkids, and they don't think twice about posting things and sharing things and clicking on links. And so I think it's also a matter of education to everybody within that network to kind of not do stupid things, not click on links that you don't know, or not post things in public chats and forums and other things. But it takes some discipline on behalf of, probably the younger family members are a little bit more guilty of doing these things than some of the older ones. But, there are solutions out there to fit almost every need.
And Rush, you usually head up our investment conversation, so maybe you and Jay can get into a little bit the various trends, Jay, that you're seeing across the investment space, and Rush, you can talk a little bit about what we've been seeing at recent events.
Okay, and then I was gonna ask you. You'd mentioned compliance, and we're noting family compliance, but with family offices and multifamily offices becoming more prolific and more widely used by families, as you said, billionaires, millionaires, kind of being printed each day. What, if anything, do you see coming down the pike on government regulation? What can people expect in that arena?
And Jay, we will put in here the part that always makes all the lawyers and insurance people happy, that this will be conversational only, not meant to be advice. Anybody listening, please go see your own professionals who are familiar with your situation. And Jay is just sharing what he may be hearing in his travels or taking to families he's meeting with. So there you go, Jay. I've blanketed the conversation.
Thank you. Yeah. General disclaimer on everything that I say. What I would say is compliance in an MFO is very different. So an MFO is going to be registered as an investment advisor, either with the feds or their state. There's very specific requirements for them when it comes down to different things. And most of them will have a dedicated full-time chief compliance officer that keeps up to date on all those regulations and requirements. When it comes to a single family office, it's a little bit, you can get away with a little bit more because you're trying to keep your privacy. But I think, right now, I think as we speak, there's something that's pending with the government where they're trying to have everybody register with every entity has to be registered, and it's back and forth, and I'm not sure. I think it's on appeal right now. So I will leave that up to lawyers to answer that part of the question. But I just think there's a certain amount of transparency that the government wants and has to have. And as you'll see with any kind of transaction, especially anytime money is leaving the United States or coming into the United States, there's, OFAC and bank checks and everything else. So there's a certain amount of compliance that's embedded in financial transactions. From a family office standpoint, as I said, when you set up your infrastructure, if you do things properly, and part of that is your banking, so generally speaking, with any family that I work with, we will have relationships with one or two of the mega global banks. We'll probably have one or two relationships with mid-sized regional banks, and then maybe a couple local banks. And different transactions, you get obviously different levels of service and different levels of compliance. But if you're doing international transactions, it helps to have a JP Morgan or Citigroup or somebody else behind you, because they have offices overseas and other things that you could work with. It eases that stuff. But you'll probably get much better service at a smaller, more regional bank, where you have more personal relationships. And so I think, again, part of building that infrastructure is making sure you have enough relationships in place that if anything goes wrong with any of those options, you've got backups in place and ready to go.
Great.
Thank you. So I guess, go ahead, Jennifer.
No, I always do that. So Jay, just so you know, inevitably in some show, we don't get by without me jumping in on something. So Rush, I will get out of your way. Sooner or later, the wheels come off, and I always jump in. So
I was just going to say, on to the fun stuff now with what Jennifer kind of set up for us, is investment trends, what's new, what's exciting, and what's tried and true that everybody just seems to keep fortifying in their portfolios in the family office space.
I would say private credit continues to be in great demand, and in all of its various flavors and forms. Obviously, distressed real estate is getting a lot of headlines right now. The Bank of America Tower in St. Louis just traded hands for $3.5 million. Last time it sold, it was over 200. So, people are saying like, hey, where are those deals? And, why are those deals available? And, right now I'm representing a foreign family that's trying to bring some money into the United States that wants to buy some assets here. In the realm of distressed real estate, there are certainly plenty of those. And we think that this is early innings in that game. So you need to do your homework ahead of time. You need to know which cities and states and jurisdictions you want to be doing business in, and what asset class types you're looking for, and then be on the lookout for those different things. The equity markets are, I'm not an expert there, and I don't think anybody really is, because even the economists constantly backward revise their forecasts and everything else. But I think there's something to be said that it's a bit overbought. The fundamentals behind the economy right now are, I would say, questionable. We're in an election year, so Washington wants to project a certain image, and they're having their spokespeople hit all the channels to talk about how great everything is. But I think the fundamentals, when you really look behind it, are not quite there. So I'm a bit cautious in the overall equity markets. Obviously, interest rates are still high. So when it comes to real estate and other things, you have to look at what your financing costs are going to be and what your hold cost is going to be, because it may take a while. Whereas, 3-4 years ago, you may thought your holding period would be 5 years. With the cost of capital going up so much, it may be a 10-year hold now. And you have the ability to hold that for that long and continually maintain it. As I said, private credit continues to be a great space to be in, just because banks are continuing to either fall apart or meet their capital requirements. They're not lending as much. That's just a fact that's out there. So there are a lot of different private credit strategies that money is flowing towards because it has to. But the return reward scenario is pretty good on most of them. Venture capital, I think, is, again, similar to the equity markets, very expensive. I'm very, very cautious there because technology moves so fast. You have to have real experts that understand the VC, that are really have their finger on the pulse of the different industries that they're covering, whether it's software as a service or hardware or biotechnology or whatever else. I think you want to be looking at specialty managers that really, really know those sectors very well and allow them to give you some guidance and advice. But I'm also cautious with a lot of those things. Secondaries are still out there and interesting in some cases if you can get the right pricing. But another trend I see that is continuing is families wanting to do business with other families on a very quiet, private basis. And I know that we just came through a period in the market where SPACs were all the rage and these reverse mergers and all the rest of that. But I've been in this business for a long time, and generally speaking, those things are kind of scary and have much greater risk involved. I'll relate it to an old saying that we say: certain investments are sold and certain investments are bought. And generally speaking, if there's really high commissions in there and they're not great for the customer, those are sold by brokers or others. And I think SPACs and some of these reverse mergers would fall into that camp, versus I think the whole nature of family offices wanting to be private. I think it's better to just, find another family that has similar interests, that wants to get into certain industries. You set up an SPV just between the two families and you invest in those sectors, and you have more control. You get board seats. You get to really guide the future guidance of those companies, and probably get a better, more tax favorable, in that you're going to probably own this for a while. So you have longer term capital gains tax rates on those things versus the public markets, which you can't control. So those are the trends that I'm seeing with family offices. Jennifer, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't, Jay. What I was thank you very, very much. What I was thinking is, as we bring this to a close today, all of the things you were mentioning, one of the conversations I have over and over again right now, we recently had this staffing conversation on the show, is really when family offices are thinking about their staffing. We see this trend toward finding, more generalists, maybe because people just think that you're going to find a person to wear many hats or consolidate a little bit the internal teams. But everything you're sharing, to me, highlights the importance of finding, you mentioned, the CIO role, CFO role, the segregations, not only for controls, but for this expertise where families are dealing with, with a level of assets and a level of decision making that very few others are. There's really that top of the pyramid in terms of individuals able to step in and help families with this kind of stuff on a day-to-day. So that leads me to asking, what mistakes, staffing, I think, being a big one when families cut that short, but are you seeing families make that when they decide to form a family office can go wrong?
I think one of the great, it's like I said, double-edged sword. It's great to have a lot of employees to do a lot of different things, but I think you can condense it down to key roles and having very, very specific roles and responsibilities without a lot of overlap. You want one or two general players in the office that can always fill in if somebody calls in sick or goes on maternity leave or whatever else. But generally speaking, family offices have the historical perspective that they're cheap, and a lot of them are. They don't want to spend extra money. But part of the conversations I have with families is, do you want to be penny wise or pound foolish? Because if you skimp and save up front too much, if you don't set up your infrastructure properly, you get, like I mentioned last week, you get involved in one legal situation and it can cost you millions of dollars for that mistake. So I think setting things up properly to begin with and having the key people in place and the controls in place and the compliance in place is much, much better long-term investment for the family to keep them protected, to keep everything going the right direction, rather than saving money up front, but having it cost you a lot of money on the back end.
Great. And well, Jay, I want to thank you very, very much in terms of for your sharing today, and in terms of your work, with family offices. Shirley Hire out there, Shirley Hone, and Jay, I think Shirley. If you haven't met her, hopefully we'll get you introduced soon. But very, very nice to see you. And I know you have a wide range of expertise, Jay, to share. We have, I did post a bit more about your biography earlier today. We'll make sure we share that with everyone again. But with your okay, want to make sure that if people do follow up, have questions, that they'll be hearing back from you, and that we can put you in touch.
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. So just look me up, Jay Rogers, or it's Alpha J at, LinkedIn.com or whatever. But happy to talk to anybody at the upcoming conferences, whatever. I'm always willing to, give a few minutes of my advice or guidance or whatever else. And looking forward to meeting everybody.
Always thank you very much. Thanks again, Jay, very much. And to everybody, again, either watching live or listening, which we know is many, many of you, thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you on next week's show. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a good week.
Bye, Jay. Thank you.